Okay, so I got a request to do a video on this knife. And so this is probably like the third knife I've made, I think, if I remember correctly. And it is like my second favorite knife like ever that I've made. So, I'll talk about just like, so first the measurements, and I'll do a comparison to some knives I have. I mostly have big knives, but just to get an idea of the size of this thing, because it is pretty big. So it's 9.5 inches long, the blade. It's 2.5 inches wide. It's the handle is 4.5 inches long, and then the stock itself, the steel on this it's a little bit more than 4 millimeters. So I think it gets close to 5. So yeah, in general, it's about like a quarter an inch almost. So in general, yeah, it's a big, heavy knife. And so next up, I'll compare it to some of the knives I have. Okay, so here it is with the CRKT Clever Girl. This is a 4-inch blade on this one. And then here's a 5.5-inch blade, folding knife. Move this guy a little bit forward here. And then a 6-inch folding blade. And then last, this is about 7.25-inch blade, the Bushcraft Tanto. So yeah. Okay, so now just my thoughts behind like making this knife. I wanted something with a lot of belly, and yeah, it's like super curved. You see that? Super curved. It's I want it to be kind of like a kitchen knife slash mountain knife slash like defense. So I tried to put in like as many things as I could into one knife. And yeah, so you can see the belly here. So I did want it to use like for cooking and stuff like that too. You can rock it. I put this design on the spine, just so you can put your thumb up, hold it, so it doesn't slide back and forth. It's mostly for just like aesthetic purposes rather than functionality, but it does have a bit of functionality to it. One of the main things I had to do was, so I wanted a cross guard. And the thing is, when you have something like this, so either I can put a cross guard way out here, which is insane, and plus the blade itself is like partly a cross guard. It's on this side, so it wouldn't make sense for me to just continue this thing over here. So what I did was I basically I cut the thickness of this cross guard, which is copper, so it's a copper cross guard. I cut the thickness into the blade itself, and I'll draw a little drawing to show you what I mean. And I placed it in there, so I can have this part of the cross guard out here, and this will still be held by something out here too, so it's not just pinned and then on there. And I don't like soldering things too, because this is a CPM 3V steel. I don't like soldering cross guards because, well, I haven't tried it, but I don't like the idea of it because I don't like messing with the heat treat. So I'm kind of paranoid with that kind of stuff. I think that if I introduce too much heat to the blade, which is true to a certain point, that I would ruin the heat treatment on it. So just to avoid all that, just error on my part, because there is a way of doing it without messing up the heat treatment. But just to avoid my personal error, I just like doing just the epoxy. So I'll do a little drawing and I'll show it to you. All right, so the handguard would be easier to explain with this drawing. So what I did was, so imagine this is the knife itself. So if I were to like take off the handguard, take this off, it would look like this, the cutouts on the knife. So I made this little notch here, and then you have these two little corners, these 90-degree angles on each side. And this hole here, this is the handguard itself, fits into these. So these two 90-degree angles fit inside this hole, and this little notch is basically here. So this is the little notch. This fits into the little notch here. And then you got the 90-degree angle, and then the 90-degree angle, oops, in the back here. So that's the only way I can think of. I haven't seen this before. Maybe it's out there. But instead of pinning it, I didn't want to pin this this handguard to the blade itself. The only way I could think of was basically just doing these cutouts, and then what I do is, that's what's nice about using copper too. So copper will deform in comparison to steel. And so I did the copper, and then I made it so it was slightly smaller than what I needed, and then just jammed it in here, just wedged it in here with epoxy. And that's how I got this handguard. So yeah, kind of weird, but it worked. So I think it worked. So the main concern was basically, if you hit it on top of here, it's not gonna move because it's up against this blade. If you hit it here, it's not gonna move because it has from about here, from here on, this is holding it in place too. So, and then not just that, this wedge, this little probably like a 1/4 inch of wedge that this got pushed into will hold it too, I think. So yeah. Next up, I'll talk about the handle. The handle's made out of flame box elderburl, and it's stabilized wood. So there's a lot of pluses for stabilized wood. You can get woods that have like beautiful designs and have them be as hard as basically like, well, your harder woods. So what they do is, from what I understand, is they get like a sort of epoxy or glue, and they pressurize these pieces of wood, and they have the wood absorb as much epoxy or whatever as possible, and then they just let it cure. So you get something that feels a lot like plastic, kind of, but it becomes like way less susceptible to the elements. I mean, it won't soak up water. That's like the big deal. It's easier to work with. You can polish it better. You can it won't chip as much. It won't get as fuzzy as much as like regular wood. And one of the things I like the most is that I've noticed, it doesn't really change colors that much. So what you start out with kind of ends up being what you'll have like later on, and that is like a huge plus for me. So certain wood, it's nice that it ages. It tends to get darker, like Osage orange, I think it's called. Starts out, yellow, and then it turns brown, and then with sunlight, and then in general, just wood tends to change with time, and that's like, it is beautiful in its own way, but it's nice to have something start out beautiful and stay that way. I got really lucky with this piece of wood, and the reason is because, well, it isn't, for me at least, it isn't like really a science to choose, what pieces are best or which area of the piece of wood to use. I started out with 5 inches, and it was like 1.5 inches wide, and I have to move it around and basically choose what I think is the best space for the wood. And then I have to look at the grain in which direction it's going, so that when I do grind it, I have to choose which side of the scale to use, piece of wood scale, so that the grain does go, try to match it as much as I can with the other piece, but then also try to get the most red or the most white or the most of whatever I want in the final piece. And where I got super lucky with this was something that, I mean, there's no way I could have just figured it out. So I pinned these. So when I do have the scales on there, and I started off, I think I mentioned it, but I'm not sure. I started off about 1/2 inch. I mean, yeah, like about 1/2 inch thick. So I pin everything together, and I epoxy it. I leave it 24 hours, and then afterwards, what I do is I just grind it down, and then after that, it just becomes luck. It's whatever you basically choose. You flip a coin, and then kind of whatever happens after that. And then what happened was, where the 2 pins were, it started like seeping red from the back. So So you see there's white. And this towards this side, see this little piece here? So it turns out it basically runs across. This little, it's like a little red vein that runs across. And it's seeped into these two pins. And what I super like, and this just might be, what is that thing called? Yorkshire ink blot test or whatever. It might be some kind of deal like that for me. But to me, it looks like the top half of a skull. And I'll show you, just so I don't sound weird. So, all right. So, these would be the eyes. This would be the nose. See, like a little upside down heart. And then this would be the top teeth. And then so just the half, the upper portion. So I don't know, it just looks beautiful to me. So I got really lucky with the handles most of all. And then in general, yeah, I'm super happy with it. It is very sharp. I'll show you, I'll do some cutting things towards the end. But I'll go with the negatives next. All right, so now for the negatives. One of the things that I wanted for this knife was that for it to be kind of a jack of all trades. And I mean, there's a saying, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. I think there's a longer version of that too. But this thing's like really thick behind the edge. So if you try to cut like apples and like that, stuff like that, it won't, you know, like a potato, like a raw potato or things like that, it won't make them explode, but it is pretty thick behind the edge. And I had to do that. So if I wanted to like use it for bushcraft stuff or whatever, I don't really do bushcraft, but like, let's say I want to, like, you know, cut branches or things like that with this knife. I'm able to do it still. I had actually, oh, here's the thing too. I just saw it right now. So that's what I remembered. I had to take off the corner on this, if you can see, just a little bit on the blade, because one of the first things I did with this knife was I grabbed it, whoop, and just cut the side of my finger. So yeah, this was a 90-degree angle. So yeah, I didn't think about that before when I made it. So that's a negative. It just so it works for a kitchen knife, but you wouldn't want to use it all the time. And leading into this next point, it's really heavy. It is like a very solid, heavy piece of steel. And so if you do try to like whittle or stuff like that for a while, you're gonna start getting pretty tired. It's just gonna be, yeah. So you can't really do things. I mean, you can chop all day if you want, I guess, but things that tend to be, you know, that use a lot of minor muscles, you know, to do like fidgety tasks or little things that you know take some amount of delicacy or whatever, you're gonna get tired. Not quickly, but you'll get tired for sure. So that's another negative. The other negative is, all right, so design wise, okay, this is a little bit less than an inch thick right here. And to me, I mean, this is just me paranoia, I think it has a ton of weight in the front. The only thing I'm afraid of is that someday this will weaken. But I put the pin far enough from this connection here, and I don't think that'll ever happen. But I wouldn't change a thing, actually. I wouldn't. If I made this thicker, then it wouldn't look as nice. And I think it's thick enough to be functional and it still be fine, like for my lifetime. But it is a point to make that this is actually it does go from a very, very wide, and I've mentioned this before, you want things to taper gradually into something. But when it comes to kitchen knives, you can't really do that, something that to at least resemble a kitchen knife. So this does taper from a very wide piece to a very thin piece, 2.5 inches to an inch, about an inch. So yeah, that's another thing. Other than that, the finish, I guess. So this was like my third knife, I think. And I like this. I don't know. I'm not really picky with finishes. As long as it's like sharp, as long as it's the edges nice and straight, I don't know if you can see that. You know, in the center, as long as it has all, like, checks off all the boxes for functionality, I'm happy with it. So yeah. All right, I almost forgot about this. So the last negative thing I can think of is just how huge it is too. So it's like super huge. I pictured myself like Crocodile Dundee or something like that, walking around with this thing, but it's just insane. It's just I made this holster for it, and it's like a pancake. I think I've mentioned this before, but yeah, it's like a pancake. It's just crazy wide. So this is, let me see. It's about like 4 inches. Yeah, it's like 4 inches wide, which is nuts. So if you want to carry this thing, even if it's leather, because leather you have to leave a certain amount of space on the outside so you can do the stitching. And it's just, you're not gonna get much thinner than this. And yeah, so carrying it around, stuff like that, it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of a crazy heavy big knife. But so this is the sheath I made for it, just real quick. And I made this little hole here, so when you do grab it, you just go up here and just pull it out. And you have your hand in place. You're not grabbing it back here and then have to scoot it up. You just go up to it and then just pull it out, and then you're fine. So okay, so now for the cutting tests. All right, so first up is paper. I'll just cut this to show you how sharp it is. And to this side. So yeah, it is sharp, even though it's like crazy thick. Ooh. I'm trying to cut this while looking through the camera. So yeah, it is really sharp, even though it's like, you know, nice and thick. And actually, I didn't mention this. So this is actually crowned, and the tip, I did give it quite a bit of reinforcement, so it is pretty thick before it narrows. So yeah. Okay, so next up, how about a water bottle? Let's try that. All right, so the water bottle test. And to give you another idea of how big this knife is, so there it is. And let's try this. Okay. All right, so that's how the bottom half looks now. And yeah, pretty clean cut. It just, because of the thickness, it just separates it. It just makes it fly everywhere, you know, like each piece. But I'm gonna try cutting it once again. So it doesn't have almost any, like no water at all. Just like this little portion here. So we'll see what happens too. Let's do it like this. See what happens. All right. And I actually cut into my own wood, just a little bit. You can kind of see the line there. So the tip ran across the top there, and it came out this other side. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Super heavy, but also very thick, but also yeah, very nice at cutting too. So this is my second favorite knife. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. If you want me to, like, things that I missed or something like that. Yeah, it's always nice to get and I appreciate it, to get like requests for certain videos or ideas. And there's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff more than I do, so it's always nice to get tips on things too. So thanks. All right, bye.